Hello, everybody. Did you miss us? Well, I missed you. Welcome to another episode of GameSpot Gameplay, and allow me to first apologize for missing a couple of weeks because I work with awful, terrible people, and they refuse to come onto a podcast, and I don't think you all come to listen to me just talk by myself for an hour and a half. So the good news is this week I actually found people that want to cast. And I'm going to introduce you to those people right now. Carolyn Pettit is here.
I am.
And Justin Haywald
is
also here.
I would have been on. I was gone last week running marathons.
Yay! Did you win?
I won the marathon. I came in middle of my age and
that's not winning.
I didn't die.
That's a win.
That would be
but
a win
it's not
for
winning.
Me. Yeah.
But yeah, we're good with that. So thanks for coming in. But this is episode 70, by the way. So
okay.
I missed the 69 call out. I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, you did. Were you not here for episode 69? I thought you were here for episode 69.
I was, but we didn't say.
Yeah, we didn't actually make any 69 jokes, which is kind of depressing, I guess.
Because there are no good 70 jokes.
Maybe. Well, I think there are maybe some good 70 jokes out there. Maybe somebody in the Twitch chat can offer a good 70 joke.
All lemon
so
jokes.
Indeed, we are broadcasting live on the internets. So if you are watching live on the Twitch TV, then by all means, put in your comments there, join in, have a little fun with us, and we'll have a little fun back with you. And if you're a terrible human being, then we'll cast you asunder.
Right in.
Yes. At least you'll fit right in at Justin's house. So let's get right going on into things. And the first thing I want to talk about is the thing that everybody loves talking about, because we here at GameSpot are social justice warriors.
Well, I am.
Well, Carolyn is.
I'm the only one who made the list.
There's an official list of social justice warriors.
Yeah, it was just me from GameSpot.
You're the only person from GameSpot. I was sad. I really wanted to be on that list. I feel like I'm a very proper social justice warrior, but maybe not.
Gotta put in the time.
Klepek at Giant Bomb.
Patrick Klepek at Giant Bomb.
Yeah.
So there was another CBS fellow.
Well, a CBS fellow, yes.
Right. And so anyway, we're gonna put our social justice warrior hats on for a minute and talk about Tomodachi Life.
Okay.
Because some fans had come forward, and well, Carol, why don't you fill us in as to what was going on?
So I actually am not the most knowledgeable person on this issue. On Twitter the other morning, I looked at Twitter and people were. I saw tweets saying things like, "Hey Nintendo, disallowing same-sex relationships is not preventing social commentary or not avoiding a social stance. It's firmly stating one." I think it was Laura Kate Dale who tweeted that or something to that effect. And so, yeah, as I understand it, there's a game, Tomodachi Life, if I'm pronouncing, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. So, Justin, why don't you give us the correct pronunciation?
Tomodachi Life is a very quirky, I mean, it's hard to even call it a game, but it's kind of a mini game collection of things that you play on your DS.
Right.
And it's a mix of The Sims and Animal Crossing. There's not a lot that you play. It's mostly kind of watching these interactions with people that you introduce into your 3DS in the form of your Miis. In the original, it was on the original DS for in Japan. Of course, never came to America because it's really weird and quirky. You watch basically your Mii's dreams, and in these dream scenarios, they go and they sing karaoke to living statues. They dance around a virtual boy and chant weird things. And one of the things that happens is that you fall into relationships with other Mii characters
in the dreams, or in the actual. In the dreams, actual lives of the characters.
And I think in the actual lives as well. Okay. Like you form relationships with people. You can foster getting people together. But in the original Japanese version, there was a glitch that some people had exploited where they were able to get male and female characters together.
Sure.
Which Nintendo, which when it was brought to their attention, like that this is coming out in the West, Nintendo patched. They were like, well, we didn't mean for that to happen.
Yeah.
We're going to take that out.
Yeah.
And people thought that was a feature. Right. because it seemed like a normal thing to have in a game like this, which is so otherwise weird and just completely crazy. Like, why would you want to limit anything?
Sure.
When you have people swimming out of the ocean to do marriage proposals to people.
Right. Exactly.
And Nintendo has basically come out and said, no, that was a problem. That was a glitch. We fixed it.
Yeah.
We're sorry. We're not going to change this.
Yeah.
But we still like you. We're not trying to make a statement with this. Is basically what they're coming out and saying.
Yeah.
That the game is the way that it was made.
And that's where things get problematic. Is that you can't avoid making a statement, right? I mean, to disallow this is not making a statement. It is making a statement. It is saying that these kinds of relationships are less acceptable than those kinds of relationships.
And right before we came up here, I actually got a note from Nintendo, which we added to the story, which I can read right here. It's
Please.
breaking news, basically.
Go for it.
Nintendo wrote in an email, we apologize for disappointing many people by failing to include same-sex relationships in Tomodachi Life. Unfortunately, it is not possible for us to change the game's design.
It's not possible.
And such a significant development change can't be accomplished with a post-ship patch. At Nintendo, dedication has always meant going beyond the games to promote a sense of community and to share a spirit of fun and joy. We're committed to advancing our longtime company values of fun and entertainment for everyone. We pledge that if we create a next installment in Tomodachi series, we will strive to design a gameplay experience from the ground up that is more inclusive and better represents all players. So they're not, I mean, basically they're saying we're not going to change it now, but we're open to possibly doing that if we do another game in the future for all of you people who have raised a ruckus.
It's interesting because, of course, part of the argument is that we just don't we don't have the development resources, or it would be too much of a burden on us, either financially or from a human resources perspective, to actually do this action. Although it's hard not to look at the idea that, of course, they patched out a very similar type of thing. Now, my understanding is actually that what you were allowed to do is that you were allowed to actually make male or female characters have characteristics and wear clothing that were actually designed for the opposite genders. So my understanding is that was more of a
it was kind of tricking the game.
Fans had found a way to trick the game as opposed to the game originally supporting that.
Which is weird because Animal Crossing New Leaf, is another game that I really enjoy from Nintendo, and you're able to just dress up your character however you want. You can have a male character and give him a very feminine haircut and put him in dresses.
Yeah, but there's not the issue of relationships to contend with, right?
But you do have dogs and cats who fall in love with you, and it gets a little weird. Things get when penguins move into your town, and they're just like...
We've all been there.
So are penguins innies or outies? I guess I don't really know the answer to that.
They're penises?
I don't know. Do they even have those? I don't know the answer to any of that. Maybe if somebody in the chat knows their penguin biology or what have you, they can.
Where did this even come from?
I don't know. It just started with penguins and it snowballed from there. Get it? Snowballed from penguins. See what I did there?
I forgot what snowballed means in the nomenclature in the bad things.
Figurative in the figurative sense.
Hold on. No.
Yeah, it just builds and builds and builds.
It's something.
No, but I know I understand building and building. I thought there's another thing that you when you snowball.
It's in Clerks. You don't remember that?
I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
I don't know what's happening in this room now.
When you snowball, it's a thing. It's a snowball.
Oh! Damn it, Justin! You made me think of awful things. God damn it! Nobody try to inform me in the chat what that is. No, even I don't have a mind that bad.
We were snowballing.
Let's do a quiz.
Yes.
I want to get away from that for just a second, and we'll do a quiz. So, Call of Duty is a big thing right now. One of the reasons of which is that we know that Kevin Spacey is going to be starring in it, ostensibly as the villain. Is that confirmed, or is there just an assumption?
I think it's an assumption
that Kevin Spacey will be playing the villain. Of course, he rants about democracy in the new trailer, and it's an interesting facsimile of Kevin Spacey. He looks more or less like, he looks more like Kevin Spacey than Kevin Bacon. So that's good. And
why would he look like Kevin Bacon?
Well, it wouldn't be bad if the avatar looked like Kevin Bacon, but then if he didn't look like Kevin Spacey, it wouldn't make any sense anymore. So anyway, I'm going to shut up about this, and I'm going to instead describe the quiz, a nice short quiz, hopefully. And this is a Call of Duty quiz versus Kevin Spacey quiz.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read some dialogue, and it's either going to be from a Call of Duty game, or it's going to be a line that Kevin Spacey speaks in character in House of Cards.
Okay.
And so I want you to tell me, and this is I'll just go back and forth between you two, even though it's not fair because I only have 5. But we'll start with Caro.
Yay! It means I get 3 chances.
Yay! So let's try this one. For those of us climbing to the top of the food chain, there can be no mercy. There is but one rule: hunt or be hunted.
That's from House of Cards.
It is from House of Cards, yes, indeed. Justin, let's give this a try. The just have turned their backs and become deaf to your cries. Who then will show them justice? Who will show you the liberty they have promised?
That sounds like Call of Duty.
It is Call of Duty. It's from Call of Duty Ghosts, spoken by Gabriel T. Rourke. And so back over to Caro. Oh, there are only 4. I only chose 4. I meant to choose 5. So that's good.
1-1.
Yeah. So, Caro, let's
Yeah.
try this one. Boundaries shift, new players step in, but power always finds a place to rest its head.
I think that's House of Cards.
I'd say House of Cards.
That's Modern Warfare 2.
Oh, okay.
Spoken by General Shepard.
Oh, yes.
And going back over to Justin for the last one, how about this one? There's no better way to overpower a trickle of doubt than with a flood of naked truth.
Well, that definitely sounds like House of Cards.
It is House of Cards, yes. So good job there. And obviously, Caro, are you a fan?
Of what, House of Cards?
House of Cards, yeah.
I watched the first season. I haven't watched the second season yet. I found it quite compelling.
I was very disappointed with the reporter in that.
The act, like as an actor.
I mean, as her role, becoming like something that was really. I haven't finished season 1 yet.
Okay.
I'm actually still in the middle of season 1, but that she starts out as like someone who's wanting to be to get to the bottom of things and
Sure.
to be an active force for good, and then she just becomes like another pawn and just kind of a sex toy.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's part of what the show is trying to say is that, you know, you play these games, you're kind of going to get dirty too. You're going to get caught up in them. But yeah, no, I understand what you mean.
But it's relatable. I mean, writing about video games, that's how I got my job.
Yeah, slept your way to the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Not
slept my
with
way to
me.
the middle.
to the middle, right.
Yeah. So it's interesting though, because I was watching some. I watched a whole stretch of episodes, and then the last episode I've seen was a kiss that just shocked the hell out of me that I didn't see coming, and that was how that particular episode ended. There was not just one person, 2 people, I should say, involved with the kiss, and that's why I was so
My
surprised.
favorite moments on that show are always when Kevin Spacey is like playing his Vita or his PlayStation or whatever, and it's like totally obvious that he doesn't actually know how people who play games like hold and use a controller. He's just kind of, you know, miming it in some, I don't know, some very phony way. But and then the obvious kind of product placement kind of Sony stuff, because it's all like, you have a PlayStation Vita, you know, or whatever. They take a moment to spotlight the Vita and talk about it.
Because otherwise, why the hell would he be playing on a Vita? As a like, that really does not fit with his
People
personality.
don't play that unless they're paid to, right?
I mean, I'm just saying, it's like it's everything is PlayStation or Vita or whatever. There's no
Right.
like mention of Xbox or Nintendo or anything. So it seems obvious that there's a Sony tie-in there.
So could they be possibly maybe at some point there could be an Xbox One mention?
No,
if there's a Call of Duty.
Oh, but there won't. That's going to be a
Isn't
completely...
Xbox about to start making content themselves?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
So
a whole
I
separate...
guess they'll Xbox will be getting into the Netflix business,
Like the original
as it were,
programming
on Hulu for
stuff, yeah.
the original stuff, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
to see people using Kinect
to do what
to play Kinect Sports.
and that'll be a TV show.
No, I mean it'll be a cameo. They actually had the Star Wars dancing game in an episode of Big Bang Theory.
Oh, and there was also an episode of Big Bang Theory that featured Age of Conan, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah, where that was the MMO that they were playing.
Yeah, which
Because
was really
that's-
strange because nobody plays that.
That's the
anymore.
MMO that you would play.
I'm kidding. I love Age of Conan against all odds, but I was glad to see that an underpraised game actually was getting a little love. But I also knew that some money probably changed
Yeah,
hands.
it's not.
For that
It's not like
particular
the
thing.
writers of that show just loved Age of Conan. It's
Well, yeah, I get. Maybe you never know. But
Well, they might.
yeah, let's look at some other news that happened this week. I'm sort of curious. Let's since we're on Nintendo, why don't we talk more Nintendo? I'm sort of curious because, of course, now we got to the end of March, and that's when a lot of companies' financial years come to a close. And now how well they did in the last financial year is sort of trickling out from different companies and so forth. Nintendo, though, being one of the more interesting examples of that, Iwata's come forth and said, "I feel deeply responsible for poor performance." Why don't you kind of give us an idea, Justin, of what's going on at Nintendo and why they're not so necessarily happy about things?
Well, I don't think it's any surprise that the Wii U has not been doing great. Nintendo, I think, has been very open about saying we're not doing well and we're sorry. They lowered expectations for what the Wii U was going to sell near the beginning of the last fiscal quarter, and they've kind of put out some projections again, which do not paint the Wii U in a very good light at all. Basically, they're saying we've sold. Well, they're saying we've shipped, I think, about 5 or 6 million consoles, and by the about 6 million, and by the end of this year, they're going to ship another 3 million. So, of course, that's not sold. That just means producing and pushing out to retailers. So they're not even expecting to get 10 million consoles out by the end of by the end of 2014.
Yeah, I think to put that in perspective a little bit, like
the PlayStation 4 has sold 7 million.
Sure, but another fact that I find amazing is that the Mario Kart game on the Wii sold 35 million copies. 35 million, and that's like, 5 times as many. I mean, that's
5 times as many Wii U's as exist
exactly
in people's hands.
So like we're coming up on the release of Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U. It's going to sell some systems, definitely. There will be people who buy Wii U's for this game, but it just shows you how much less successful the Wii U has been than the Wii.
But it's not all doom and gloom. The 3DS is still doing really, really well, and
Nintendo has tons of money like in the bank, right? They're a very wealthy company.
They have a lot stockpiled. It's not like this would break them in any way like the GameCube did either. Like they have plenty of room to experiment and to try new things, and of course that's what they're going to be doing. And they talked about some of the quality of life, a new pillar, and things that they're going to be basing development around. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that at E3. I have no idea what this means. The way that they described it before is that they're going to try to leapfrog wearable technology, which doesn't make any sense. But they said basically we're going to leapfrog wearable technology and produce something that will improve people's quality of life. And that's what their focus is for their third pillar.
Because the vitality sensor really went well.
It never came out. Yeah, Wii Fit. Wii Fit came out and did well. But as a gamer, what I would actually prefer that they had a bigger focus on 3DS. Like I hope that this is a wake-up call, that like they have to have a console that competes with the PlayStation and the Xbox and Apple and Google in terms of integration. That you can't have a handheld console and a console that sits in your living room and just have two completely separate systems. Like that I can buy Super Mario Bros. 3 on my Wii U and on my 3DS, and they are in no way connected, and you're going to make me pay for them twice? Like that's just completely nonsensical. And I would love actually just a more powerful 3DS or a more powerful handheld system that maybe you can plug into your TV and play virtual console games, and otherwise it just plays games that are custom built for a handheld experience.
So I'm kind of curious though. Do you think that wearables is that really a thing? Does that sound more like Nintendo talk about something that might end up being a gimmick, like the second screen for the Wii U or whatnot? I mean, do you think that they're barking up the wrong trees?
Well, we thought motion control was a gimmick with the Wii.
True.
Right.
But did it really go anywhere after the Wii in a meaningful way?
It doesn't matter, I don't think, really, because it was so financially successful at the time.
Right.
So
and it's changed the way that people interact with games. It's changed the way that Microsoft and Sony looked at developing games. That they're trying
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have all those very traditional console experiences, but it definitely got them looking at how can we change the way that you interact with games, and that's where the Kinect came from. That's where PlayStation Move, and I think that let them know there's a market for this, and that this is something we can create, something that will get a huge zeitgeist, a huge upswell of support behind if we can find the right thing, and they just haven't found it yet.
Yeah, but that's sort of what I'm wondering though. Is we saw the success of the Wii, and then we saw Microsoft and Sony make decisions based on that success with the Kinect and with the Move. But it strikes me as though those technologies then really didn't go anywhere. It started and essentially stopped, in the same generation. And so I'm wondering if we've just reached a point where, well,
the bigger problem is
something about like virtual reality as well.
With this kind of technology, they're going to be going up against Google and Apple. Like they're pushing past Microsoft and Sony, but they're not. They don't have the resources of Google and Apple, and they don't have that amount of research and clout behind them in the marketplace. When you think of Nintendo, you think of, oh, they make fun, cool game things, and that's what I would have fun doing, not they make something that's going to improve my quality of life. I would love for them to prove me wrong. That would be amazing and really interesting that if they could make something that would make me go, I want this to be a part of my everyday life. But I mean, they don't have that track record so far. I mean, why would I have a lot of faith that that's going to happen?
Do you think that this is a case where Nintendo might even be considering something that, something that's so wildly different that you wouldn't even consider it in the same space anymore? Like, are we talking about like little pieces of hardware that have nothing to do with your 3DS or your Wii? Like this is how many miles I've walked, and this is my little Nintendo thing. And
from the rumors I've heard, yes, it's going to be something that nobody is expecting, and it's going to just come out of nowhere. And I think for us, from this mainstream, as a mainstream audience, the first thing we're going to see when we look at it is
you've got to be kidding me.
This is stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're not going to, again, like the Wii,
not for us.
we're not the audience.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's not going to fail, but it means that it's definitely something that I think would be worth giving thought to and seeing like how useful could something like this be. And it might just be, no, you're being a complete idiot, Nintendo. Please just make fun games. And we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. Nintendo. It's not like Nintendo didn't start from a place like that. Nintendo didn't start as a video game company, although it's been a long, long time since those early days.
And they are going to start introducing a kind of Skylanders type system with small little Mario and Pokemon figurines, which could be huge. I feel like it's a little bit late because Skylanders and Disney Infinity have been doing this for so long, but this is what people have been wanting for a long time. Like, I want to physically collect all of the Pokemon and play them in a game.
I think we just don't know yet enough or anything, really, though, about how these things will be implemented, right? It's kind of, the announcement was basically, we're going to be using this technology in some way with these figures, but exactly...
And across multiple games, which is even more
so
like...
what does that mean?
How will that work? What does it mean? What will be stored on the figures? What will they bring to the game experience? We don't know any of that yet. So
yeah, and I also have to wonder, because in a case with like Skylanders, I mean, we've gotten, it moves from generation to generation. You don't have to buy new hardware and things like that. All the figures cross over and so forth. The same is true of Disney Infinity, where the new Disney Infinity is still going to support all of the old stuff. So I guess my question then becomes, how, are people going to want to buy new stuff? If you're a parent and you've already bought your kid either a bunch of Infinity stuff or a bunch of Skylander stuff, and I have to imagine that most people that would be interested in this kind of collectible thing have already chosen a path to go down, maybe? Do you think that Nintendo jumping into this will grab people that would not otherwise be interested?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if the kids want it, their parents will buy it for them, even though I don't know. When I was growing up and I had an NES and I'd kind of beg my parents for games and I'd say, well, I want Contra or whatever. And my mom would be like, but it's just exactly like that other game that you have, which she'd already spent money on. And, in some ways she was right that there were similarities, but still, it doesn't stop kids from asking and it doesn't stop parents from buying that stuff.
And for things like with video games, there are new parents becoming parents every day. There are guys who are growing up, and for me, this hits our nostalgia so much more than Disney and Skylanders.
Right.
Does.
I know a lot of adults who actually got way into Skylanders originally, and I feel like the Nintendo figures have so much appeal for so many adults that I know that for many adults who couldn't have cared less about Skylanders will care enough to spend some money on these types of
and if
toys.
the game is good,
well, right. To me, this is all so speculative at this point. All this stuff about the quality of life stuff, the figurine stuff, because we don't know anything about anything. So we're kind of, what are we even
Mario
talking
figure
about?
And you put him in Pokemon, and then you use Mario to catch Pokemon, and then Link comes in, and you fight him. And
Yeah, but I mean, I hate to be the cynical one here, but it strikes me as though if there's any way for Nintendo to really mess it up, they probably will come up with some way to make it seem not quite so friendly or intuitive
and Nintendo,
or whatnot.
Of course, still, even in this same conference, with something like this, that is such a potentially cool idea. It's very exciting. Also introduced a phone app, which will come out probably by the end of this year, that lets you share your Mario Kart 8 racing videos and places, because that's, people are really clamoring to be able to share this stuff for a game that's not, nobody really wants this whole, they have a whole connected universe on the Wii U, the Miiverse,
yeah.
Right.
which lets you have a community with these people, which lets you share comments, and there's no way to access that outside of your Wii U. So why would you want to use that on your phone when you could just directly share your race times for a game that's not out yet, and that will probably come out months after the game? Oh.
Oh, it's just another one of those moments where it's like, oh, Nintendo. Yeah,
I mean, it's
you
like
just gotta-
sometimes they're so out of touch, but there are still those times where they surprise us. I mean,
Yep.
again, the Wii, we weren't really the core audience for it, and on sites like GameSpot, in the comments, everything is like, typically with Wii-related stories, that the Wii is not a true console or not. But I mean, Nintendo knew what they were doing with that. They were actually very savvy about that and finding, moms and older people to market that to. And I mean, so just because it's not for us doesn't mean that it's not going to be hugely
And they
successful.
can only do that stuff because they're out of touch. You know what I mean?
Right, well, that's
Well,
true. Sometimes if you're out of touch, you might...
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that was a calculated thing where, I mean, maybe they thought that they were designing something for hardcore gamers, but I think they knew what they had with the Wii. I think that's why they pushed so hard to bring in moms and grandparents and people who don't usually play games, because they knew that was where they could make a ton of money on that console.
And that's why they've always made money, right?
I mean,
Casual
not
audience.
in like the
Nintendo was
SNES
always
era
kind of a casual
and I mean, N64, like that was totally for
Hardcore.
younger people and the core at the time. Yeah.
And the Wii U has made a mistake in trying to court so heavily those hardcore gamers, because I mean they've shown that it doesn't measure up to what's out there right now. They didn't get the third-party support they expected.
Right.
And this was a console that's basically made for us. It has HD graphics and all these fun games coming out from Nintendo, the first-party things you want to play. And no, nobody is making games for it. It's a hard, big platform, big controller that
The controller is
casual
awful.
players are not going to want to use at all. Hardcore gamers barely want to use this massive
Well,
thing.
No, it feels awful.
Well, even beyond that, I mean, you say something like, I mean, it's a machine meant for hardcore gamers supposedly, but it still came with visuals on par with the generation that was just we were just leaving, and it came with almost no storage space. So I mean, I know people that can't download a single damn game for their Wii U because there's no way to store that unless you hook up a hard drive, and then suddenly it is really one of those sort of out of touch things where it's like, if you're going for that audience, I don't think they really knew what the audience wanted.
They make there's so many decisions Nintendo makes that leaves us all scratching our heads with online stuff, with just design of the Wii U. But I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't count them out. Like, I feel like that.
Oh, you can never count.
Never
Nintendo
count
out.
Nintendo out.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact of the matter is, they've still got the handheld space completely dominated. There's I mean, the one thing we're missing in all of this Wii U talk is that there is no real competition for Nintendo in the handheld space. We love the Vita.
We do. Here in the office.
Here in the office, we love the Vita. I know lots of people that have the Vita that loves it, but I mean, in terms of sales, there's not. It's not even making a dent.
Right.
No, I would give up my Vita in a heartbeat for all of the things I can do and play on my 3DS.
Yeah, no, I'm the opposite. I would. I mean, especially and looking forward to all the indie support. All the indie games that are coming to the Vita. I can't think of anything I'm excited about coming to the 3DS, but I think of the Vita. And
Mario Golf and Kirby just came out now.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had. I don't know.
I'm still trying to
played
finish
games like
Bravely
those
Default.
before. Yeah,
Not even
Bravely
close.
Default is great. But I just feel like there's so much indie stuff coming to the Vita that's going to be super exciting. So, partly, that's where my heart is at.
I love how the 3DS that it has a clamshell is just automatically better. That it's something I can put in my pocket and not worry about it getting smashed.
Okay.
It's a better portable device.
I'm not saying that it's not a better device. I'm saying that the library of stuff, to me, is more appealing on the Vita.
Yeah, I mean, the Vita's got so much going for it. It always is kind of weird that you'd think with a huge library of things available to people that, that the Vita would be more successful. But there you go. Let's do
Needed
another
a clamshell.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Make it easier to stick in my pocket, and maybe you got something. Let's do a quiz. What do you think about a quiz? Do you like quizzes? So this came up for two reasons. This particular one. Number one is that it's been a long time since we've actually played the Metacritic Over and Under.
Oh yeah.
So, and I don't think Justin's ever been here to play Metacritic Over and Under, and I don't think Benito's ever been here. I don't think we've played it since we've gone video, to tell you the truth. So it was a good time to play Metacritic Over and Under. And the other thing is, of course, I wrote a review for a role-playing game called Bound by Flame. And Bound by Flame is really not a very good game at all. But it is the kind of game that there are so few games like it. It's very much that kind of, troubled, buggy Eastern European type of game that tries to do a lot and doesn't really manage. And that kind of game,
where there's something about it that you admire, because you see what it's trying to do, and you feel like it has a certain kind of moxie, a certain kind of spirit.
Yeah, totally.
But it just doesn't come together in a way that makes it actually a good game.
And I said even in the review, this is the kind of game people are going to talk about by saying it has a lot of heart. And I do totally buy that. The problem is that it's not very good. So of course that review went up, and one thing, now that the reviews are starting to trickle in, that's interesting, of course, is that it's the kind of game that has critics split. There's no real critical mass on this one. Everybody's everywhere. It's the kind of thing I like to see. I think we all like to see in video games, because it means that rather than all moving en masse to loving something or hating something together, here's something that's splitting opinion.
Right.
And that's always fun. And so Bound by Flame is a game that's not splitting that deeply, but
there's at least not a consensus.
There's not a consensus that this is just the worst thing ever or anything. And there are some people that hate it and some people that love it, and for that, got to give it some credit for being a game that can inspire that. And so what I decided to do is look back over, say, the last year and choose 4 games that have split critics in general, and that's how we're doing the Metacritic over and under. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you some excerpts from the review that gave it the highest score according to Metacritic, and then I'm going to read some excerpts from a review of the same game from a different outlet that gave it the lowest score on Metacritic, and you need to see if you can tell me what game is actually being talked about. That's for, of course, people who haven't seen this, and for Justin, who's never played this game before. So sorry for all that long-winded explanation. So let's start with, so Cheat Code Central gave this game a 4.5 out of 5. Okay. All right, and I will read a few lines from that. The game rewards players for being meticulous and thorough explorers. You'll be sucked into the plight of every new quest giver and stay hooked as the missions grow deeper with each objective achieved.
And this is 2012.
No.
2013.
Oh, this is just over the last year.
Oh,
so this is somewhere.
Or it could have been a couple months ago.
Yeah, it could have been, or it could have been yesterday.
Okay.
It wasn't, but it could have been.
Okay.
And then a quote from the review of the same game from videogamer.com, who gave it a 4 out of 10. Okay. And said, from the first moment, it's a dull, dreary affair in every respect. The aesthetics are gray collections of fantasy tropes that draw solely from the most boring areas. Every one of its systems has been done better in the past, repeatedly. A few exceptions serve only as bright flashes to illuminate the desolate wasteland of dead ambition and imagination that is the rest of the game. And with words like that, how do you even get up to a 4?
Right.
Elder
But
Scrolls
anyway,
Online.
there you go. It is Elder Scrolls Online.
That was going to be my guess too. Yeah. Nice.
Oh, I should have said feel free to whoever just
that's
gets it
fine.
right first.
I'm just happy one of us got it.
Yay!
We're cooperating. We're a team.
Yay! That is Elder Scrolls Online.
We're on this side of the table.
As you can.
You're on the evil side.
It's. I think there's often that sense that unless a game is like completely broken, or like a 4 is about as low as you go, unless a game just really doesn't even function at all, which I sort of hate that
Yeah.
perception, but that is a perception that exists out there, and that is how I think some outlets treat the review scale.
And I think I think everybody's guilty of it from time to time. I mean, Tom will be the first one to say, that he kind of hates the idea that a game that has a certain amount of polish is always guaranteed to get a high-ish score, at least a 7 or something like that. And I know that's actually a pet peeve of Tom's is that he hates that, this idea of polish is as important as it is. So, but on the other hand, we've made our beds in certain cases, and over the course of years, and now of course, we and lots of other outlets and authors try very hard to make sure we pull ourselves away from that, so that people start seeing scores on an individual basis rather than thinking of everything as less than a 7 as somehow going on the trash heap.
And I think that as games evolve, the way that we talk about and evaluate games also needs to evolve, right? You can't just keep thinking about and writing about games the exact same way that you always have when, games are so different, right? Like, I mean, a game like Kentucky Route Zero, that's like, it's so wildly unconventional. I mean, you can't really approach, like if you approach it as a product, like as a typical video game, there's no puzzles or, this or that, but it's not trying to do any of the kinds of things that we expect a game like that to do. So you can't really apply that kind of criteria to it.
Well, it's like the Gone Home conundrum as well. It gets to the point where people are even saying, well, this isn't a game at all.
Yeah.
Clearly, even though it actually clearly is.
Right.
But for some reason, it's sort of...
And if anyone wants to know why Gone Home is a game, Steve Gaynor did a talk at GDC. Basically, I forget exactly what the title is. It was something like why Gone Home is a game, or is Gone Home a game? It was something like that. And I think you can watch the video of it now on the internet.
It was on
Google,
YouTube, I think.
Yeah, GDC, Steve Gaynor, Gone Home. And it's, I think his arguments for why that game is a game are very interesting.
What if we gave all games thumbs up or thumbs down? That's it.
I mean, there are definitely times where I hate even slapping a score on a game. I mean, I feel like a game like Kentucky Route Zero is so different. Like in giving that game a 9, that 9 means something so different from what it means when you give a game like I don't know, Gears of War 3 a 9 or whatever, right? So it's weird. Like there are times when I have this fantasy of just let the text speak for itself, and let's not even use a scoring system at all anymore.
It does seem like such a fantasy, though, right?
Oh yeah, I mean
because
that's not ever. I mean, Roger Ebert, as a movie critic, used to talk about how he hated assigning star ratings to films, but he had to because I guess his newspaper or whatever kind of demanded it, and readers like having that stuff to latch on to and talk about. Oh, this movie got 3.5 stars versus this one got 4 stars, and people love scores, and I mean, I understand that. I find them fun too to discuss and talk about.
For the marketing folks, so they can put it on the box.
Yeah,
9 out of 10.
Well, but it's also, in a certain case for our readers. I mean, at this stage, there are publications that don't attach numbers to their reviews, but they are relatively, niche publications, all things considered. Something like Rock Paper Shotgun is they're awesome, but they also don't have the same kind of readership that a place like IGN has. And honestly, I think there's value in scores as long as there's a real true understanding and relationship between publication and reader. And I think sometimes that's hard to establish. In part because there's no universal criteria for what, especially when you use a 1 to 10 scale, what those things mean. I actually think star scales are a little bit easier to handle, but I think the numbers 1 through 10 are so wrought with ideas that we learn as kids about 0% through 100% and how we get graded in school.
Yeah, like
and
6 is a D, or whatever.
Yeah, and that's where, to me, that's where this entire idea comes from. We've learned that, anything, say, less than, 60% is just a failure. So our minds lump all of those things into that criteria, and it's done deal. And it's not just readers. I do think that it is authors as well who did that for so long that all we did is contribute to the idea that basically anything that's less than a 7 is unworthy. Especially when even when I was in school, like anything to me that was less than a B would have been disastrous in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, I even grew up thinking that anything that's less than 80 must somehow be,
Just for
a
developers as well.
disappointment.
I mean, developers they lose bonuses for not reaching Metacritic score thresholds. People lose jobs over it, which is because the text of the review itself is so deeply personal. Like maybe the score itself should also become more personal. Like if I wrote reviews on the regular, maybe I would take pictures of food, and that would be my score would be a picture of food. And it would be an abstract thing. You kind of have to confer based on what you know about me, what you know about yourself, about what you think about that food, and that would represent the score.
Okay.
Like some scores would be a croissant. Maybe some of them would be curry.
Justin, the world isn't ready for these ideas. Just
Yeah,
yet.
I don't know about this. I don't know if this is getting anywhere.
I mean, maybe that's how our grandkids will read video game reviews.
You think about it. We can talk about it later.
Yeah.
I like it.
New GameSpot.
I like it.
All right, next Metacritic over
Oh,
under.
I forgot we were playing our game.
Yeah.
Thank you, Caro, for keeping me on track. Okay, let's try this one. So from Financial Post, from the Financial Post.
I love their video game reviews.
Yes, great. They gave this game a 9 out of 10.
Uh-huh.
It seems foolish to make any proclamations about what will stand out at the end of the year, but I can't imagine that I will soon forget my experience. It's not without a few warts, I'll admit. I clearly wish that the sound design was a match for the rest of the game, and the second to last chapter is a bit of a slog. So that's from Financial Post.
Okay.
Interestingly saying, I'm foolish to make any proclamations about what will stand out at the end of the year, but I'm going to make a proclamation about how it will stand out at the end of the year.
So obviously something that was earlier in the year.
Possibly.
Or this
Yes.
year or last
This
year.
year- this year or
who
last
knows?
year, yeah. From EGM,
Okay.
Electronic Gaming Monthly, a 3.5 out of 10 on this one. It's rare in this day and age that we see a heavily anticipated, aggressively advertised game shoved out the door in such a sorry state. There's a spectacle and a failure of this scope, something to be admired in being unashamed to do something so wildly different, even when different means bad.
Is it a 3DS game?
No, I'll say that it's not that.
It's not Resident Evil 6.
No.
Okay.
Praising the sound design.
No, saying the sound design isn't up to the level of the rest
Yeah,
of the
the
game.
good review said the sound design wasn't quite up to where.
Yeah. It's heavily advertised game.
It was rushed out the door by Carnegie.
I'll give you 5 seconds to see if you can come up with something.
I thought you were going to say 5 hints.
Here at GameSpot, I reviewed this game,
Uh-huh.
and it was in the middle between 3.5 and 9.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, this would be Thief.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This was the Thief reboot.
Yeah.
The reboot of Thief. So yes, that was Thief there. Let's move on to another one from Digitally Downloaded. It's also another famous site. 4.5 out of 5 stars. They say this: the themes demand that you experience a solitary, lonely quest for what ultimately amounts to absolution and redemption,
Whoa.
as it is a desperate quest, and desperation has a greater impact when it's tackled alone. This creates some very odd and fantastic moments of story, complete with awkward delivery, and while it does provide a useful answer to the nihilistic philosophical puzzle, the narrative does try to be a little too smart for its own good. Yeah, Justin over there making some crude motions.
What?
Yes. And from Cheat Code Central, 1.9 out of 5.
Okay.
Wow.
This is fan fiction level storytelling, people. I love that at the end. This is fan fiction storytelling, people. I like people that write like they talk. That's fun to me. Where'd it go? Okay. It's all melodrama and Deus Ex Machine. And I wanted to make sure that I said it exactly as it was written. This is Deus Ex Machine.
Okay.
It's just a quickly thrown together mess of mechanics, and frankly, you aren't missing anything if you totally pass this title up.
That didn't really describe it very much.
No, but I worry that if I describe it too much, that it just immediately gives away what the game is.
Deus Ex?
No, it's not Deus Ex.
Daylight?
No, but good try.
Shooter?
No. Somebody in the chat did get it. So we've got that anyway. It is not a shooter, for what it's worth. I can't think of many shooters that actively explore nihilistic ideas like that.
As soon as you start writing something like that, though, you're just that's any game. You're just being ridiculous.
What are you
Not
talking about?
necessarily.
There are absolutely games that deal with themes in very
Someone-
serious
if
ways.
Someone who's writing the way that the thing was constructed.
I disagree completely. I think that I mean, I don't know what game we're talking about, but I don't see anything
I'm gonna
wrong with
guess
talking
it
about
doesn't.
games that way.
I'm gonna guess it doesn't matter.
That the game doesn't merit that kind of discussion.
I would agree that the game does not merit that kind of
Okay,
discussion.
that's fair.
But it's somebody that obviously took to this particular story, and that's quite fine.
Of course.
So,
Super Mario 3D World.
no, I'll give you 5 more seconds to see if you can come up with anything. Let's see. Coincidentally, another game that I personally reviewed, and obviously fell in between because I wasn't either the one or the other. Although, yes. Anyway, that's that.
Were you closer to one end or the other?
Let me see. Let's see. Yes, I was closer to Cheat Code Central than I was to digitally downloaded. So I was closer to the bottom score than I was to the top score.
Okay.
As it were.
All
right. The answer is Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns.
Oh my god.
So
well, but I mean that is a game that it is trying to do stuff thematically that is like, profound. You can argue that it falls on its face, but I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with talking about the game as grappling with these kinds of bigger
not
themes.
at all. And actually, before the review came and a preview date had come, I actually wrote up about the game's religious themes and how they very clearly mirror certain aspects of Christianity. So there's something to be said there. I don't think that it succeeded, but there's that. So let's move on to is this the last one? Yeah, this is the last one. So from GameSbeat.
Okay.
All right, 86 out of 100.
Yeah.
This is a game where the characters are almost always yelling fierce, blood-curdling battle cries. You go from one fight scene to the next. Naturally, this isn't a game for your kids to play or watch. When I finished playing this game, I felt like I wanted more. That's the mark of a good game.
Oh, God.
I also felt like I had played something fresh.
Fresh.
That's always
Is
a good description.
exciting?
Is it... Well, I want to hear the bad review
All
before
right,
I
the
venture
bad
a guess.
review from Metro Game Central.
Yeah.
3 out of 10.
Yeah.
With no other substance to the gameplay mechanics, you feel like you're being trained like a circus animal, responding with Pavlovian loyalty. Oh, Pavlovian loyalty whenever someone flashes the light color or an enemy lunges at you.
Is it
the right color?
Is it Rise?
It is Rise, Son of Rome. Yes, indeed. So, Pavlovian. Thank you. I can actually say that.
I like anyone who describes a game as fresh.
Kind of surprised that 3 is the lowest for Rise, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
it's funny because I think that game is trash, and yet I ended up playing quite a bit of it.
You
It
had
was
that.
trash, but I ended up kind of
It's
playing
weird,
it.
isn't it?
You
Yeah.
have such Pavlovian loyalty to it.
And we reviewed it. Mark gave it a 4.
Yeah.
I think that he's probably about right on. Actually, I might have just called it mediocre had I ultimately done a second review or something like that.
It's a weird game.
It's really weird in the way that it's so bad, and yet it kept me kind of
compelling.
coming back. It's sort of the reason, and I think the reason is, and we've talked about this before, is that when it comes to my personal game time, which I don't have a lot of because I end up playing for work a lot of really long games. And so in my personal time, I like things that are short and really shallow a lot of the time. And Rise is absolutely incredibly shallow. And that's where I found its appeal is in how easy it was, how I could sit down, not think about a damn thing, and play something that I knew was bad, but was at least put together well.
Yeah.
If that makes any
just
sense.
Respond to the cues and just push the buttons that it tells you to push.
It was just quick time events all night long.
Yeah.
So, but
Sounds terrible. That
but
sounds
yeah.
like the worst thing.
it wasn't great. But again, I understand the appeal, and I actually shared in some of that appeal. I actually played a bunch online. but I was really pissed off because some of the achievements you couldn't get unless you downloaded the map that was for sale.
Oh, yeah.
And
Rise Son of had an online.
it did. It
feature?
did. It had an online feature.
Like you played against other people.
Yeah, one other person. Always you and one other person, but it was not against, it was cooperative.
Hmm.
So it was basically sort of like a horde mode of sorts, only with QTEs.
I'm not more intrigued.
Yeah, I know. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. I wouldn't actually recommend the game to somebody really. But I would absolutely say if
But I would
somebody,
still call it mediocre.
yeah, if somebody told, yeah, it's kind of weird. Like if somebody told me that they were into it, I'd say, yeah, I get that. You know, but it's the kind of thing where it's like I wouldn't tell anybody else that they should assume that they too will be into it, because it's just one of those things. So anyway, somebody bringing up, it's funny, Girl Draco in chat bringing up, Kevin forgets that Ninja Blade was also mostly quick time events. That's not really true. I mean, Rise is nothing but that in a sense, whereas Ninja Blade had regular combat. But its quick time events were also accompanied by some of the most ridiculous, funny, awesome quick time events I've ever seen. So that's what made that game. That game had an attitude, and that kind of attitude is actually pretty rare. A lot of other developers try to go for that. I think Suda tries to do things like that, but he just does it with very overt sexual tones, whereas this was just silly and very kind of self-effacing, which I liked. Anyway, enough about Ninja Blade. Let's talk a little bit about more news, and then we'll do our final quiz, which will be the audio quiz this week. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Steam Early Access and Kickstarter, in the sense that I want to talk about some games that have not been pleasing people of late. Now that we've seen Kickstarter successes, and now we're starting to see early access and Kickstarter. I don't know if failure is the right word, but there are some failures, I guess I would say. I'll start with a GameSpot news article and talk about Earth Year 2066. One such game recently. I don't know if either one of you have been had paid any attention to that. This is an Eddie story, so I wasn't sure if
I know there was one
you'd
called
seen it.
Towns that.
Oh yeah, we'll get to Town.
Is this
Yeah.
a Kickstarter one?
This one is a Steam Early Access. This was a game that ended up being, it's being billed as an open world, post-apocalyptic type deal, and it was really just a very small map where you went out and shoot. And it was really awful. And we
Right.
actually reviewed it.
Yeah, I remember now reading
early
the
access
review. Yes, yeah.
And it was clearly trash.
Yeah.
This was a game, by the way, that had been greenlit. So this was a game that people looked at, said, I think this is interesting. I'm going to trust this person enough to vote them up on Greenlight. And that means then, of course, that they will be able to sell their game on Steam and have it be available via early access and so on and so forth. And so, of course, we all know how this has gone at this point, which is the game was pulled from Steam. Valve came right out and said that, let me see if I can find it. But Valve basically saying, hey, the game crossed the line. There's a difference between being available early and just clearly being almost a scam. So I think that a lot of people have reached the conclusion that this is somebody possibly that bit off more than he could chew, like a single guy who decided to make this thing and clearly isn't capable of it. But sometimes the elevator pitch, in this case, it's a guy who gave his elevator pitch and people fell for it and said, yeah, we'll vote you up.
Well, and
Didn't
sometimes you set your sights really high. You're like, I want to do this, and this is my dream, and I want to make this happen. And then you actually start to work on it, and you're like, oh yeah, I suck. I'm not going to live up to the lofty ambitions that I set for myself.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that all of you believe in me.
Yeah.
Watch me fail.
I'm sure he's getting a kick out of that. Ha ha, look what I did to you. Another game, and I found this on Kotaku, so forgive me for moving things away from GameSpot every so often, but this is a game called Towns. So this was also...
What about this on GameSpot as well, I believe?
Is it? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I didn't see it on GameSpot, but I did see it on Kotaku. So my apologies, but hello to my friends at Kotaku. So this was a game that launched in November 2012 as a first batch of games on Greenlight, and originally had been promised to combine ideas from SimCity, Dungeon Keeper, Dwarf Fortress, and even Diablo. But none of those ideas were implemented when the game actually went up for sale. So and now, they've, the development hands went over to another individual, and then ultimately he's like, I can't do this. It's over. All of it's done.
Shut it down.
Shut it down. Even though the game is nothing like what was promised, and people, of course, had backed it.
There it is.
And it was released before early access even existed. So this is a case where a game actually came out, and when you bought it on Steam, this was a game that you bought. It was a finished game. That was the implication at that stage, because there was no such thing as early access on Steam when it first released.
But you can still pay money for this as well.
Yep.
It's still there, and it's just getting a lot of negative reviews. And people saying, don't buy this.
And Florian Frankenberger, who was the developer, the remaining developer on this project, said, oh, sorry, it's done. But then he went on to say, well, maybe there will be a sequel.
Ha!
So I'm going to guess that we probably shouldn't buy the sequel. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we probably shouldn't buy the sequel, even though we don't know anything about the sequel. Just saying.
He might have learned from his mistakes.
Maybe.
It might be better.
You never know. Well, at least he'll need like a sizable team. And then this reminds me of this story is a little bit older. This is not a recent story. This is mostly from January of this year. But it reminded me of an experience that I had. So I don't know if you guys, Justin, I don't think you were here at the time yet, but I had reviewed a game called Akinero Demon Hunters, which was sort of a Diablo-esque top-down clicky game coming from Spicy Horse, which is American McGee's studio. And of course, a lot of people know that I love American McGee's Alice. It's one of my favorite games of all time.
I thought we were going to see, I love American McGee.
No, let me continue the story, and you can decide, that, and I'll try to keep it nice and brief. But I reviewed the game. I gave it a 5, and in part because I ended up spending money on that game, even though it was free to play. I ended up spending more money than I would have if I would have just given $20 to play something like Torchlight 2, and so because of the way it's free to play was set up, it was just so money grabby that if I had any hope of ever finishing, I needed to pay some money, and so I did, and then ultimately we reviewed it. I gave it a 5 out of 10, and that's more or less where the Metacritic landed. I think the Metacritic ended up only like 55 or something like that. But he sent me an email, in part imploring me and not understanding why I didn't take into account the fact that a lot of features were going to still be coming. Like I called out, hey, this game doesn't have co-op, but the game was going to have co-op. This game had these things broken. Well, these things are going to be fixed. And it's one of those occasions, of course, where a lot of people think that we should be, reviewing a game based on not just what it is, but what it might someday perhaps potentially maybe be.
Yeah.
And I get that. Sometimes there are developers that are respected. If Stardock, releases something that needs to be fixed, for example, you can usually know that thing is going to be fixed. But we can't live by that. On
hypotheticals and maybes. Like, we have to review the game as it is, that for, at the time of review, what will you get for your $20 or your $30 or your $60? Like, this is the experience that this is the game as I experienced it right now. Right.
And I mean, we've gotten to a stage now in games anyway, where when you buy a game, you're even when it's not early access, a lot of the time you're still buying, it's always the case when you buy something, right? There's an element of risk. There's an element that you might be contributing money to something that's not going to meet your expectation, and so on and so forth. But we've reached the stage where we really are buying promises a lot of the time now. When we give money to developers, we're not just buying their product, we're also buying the promise.
Mm-hmm. And almost all games come with a day one patch now. Like, sure. I can't remember the last game that doesn't have an immediate, this is going to require a substantial patch on day one.
Yep. But going back to Mr. McGee, ultimately, Spicy Horse ended up losing a lot of money even after because once the game was even considered released, they then did a Kickstarter because they wanted to continue development on it so they could add other things. And so they kickstarted, and then ultimately early this year, lots of these things just never happened. All of the things that were on the list of promises, things like co-op and so on and so forth, just didn't happen because they just siphoned money. And it was, I think, their first experience with Kickstarter, that developer's first experience. And there's a big facing reality moment where you realize things that happen in development all the time in terms of how financials don't go the way you expect, or the development process doesn't happen the way you expect. Suddenly, he had not just to answer to himself and to his financial backers. Well, he did have to answer to his financial backers, everybody, all of the people that had contributed to the Kickstarter. So, it's just an interesting week where I was thinking of the lessons learned about how we're giving money to developers, specifically for their promises and above and beyond just the product that we're getting. And that's one of the reasons we do early access reviews now, is that if the developer wants your money, you should at least be able to know how good is the thing that you're getting right now. So that's
what about when you give them money for things that aren't even going to necessarily be released, like Double Fine, Tim Schafer and their team with the Broken Age RPG. I think they did a really great job of making it very open with what they're doing and how things are coming along. But I mean, you were basically giving them money and saying, "We'll hope you make a game with this," because you might not. You don't have to.
Right. Well, I mean, I think they have that with at least there's some kind of history and track record that you can look back on, and it gives you some reason to put some faith in them that they know how to make games. But even then it became this thing where, well, the original Kickstarter for Broken Age, they made more money than they asked for, if I recall correctly.
Lots more money.
Lots more money. But then because the game grew based on the amount of more money that they asked for, then they had to do this thing. Well, now we have to break the game up, and right. So even for them, there were these kind of rough spots and this uncertainty about what the money coming in means and how to develop around that or within those constraints, right? And so I think there are just lessons being learned on all sides here by developers, by consumers. I mean, whether these lessons are being learned or whether the same kinds of mistakes will continue being made, who knows? But
I kind of wonder when we're going to get our real first high-profile video game Kickstarter failure. Something along the lines of, and this isn't to to jinx anybody, but let's say, for example, something on the size of Star Citizen were to fail somehow, that Chris Roberts doesn't deliver on what was promised, or doesn't even get close to delivering what was promised.
Star Citizen, which has made millions and millions of dollars in funding.
What happens then if suddenly that just
falls apart?
Just falls apart.
Mm-hmm. And he just ends up in Mexico somehow, drinking margaritas.
I mean, I'm not suggesting. I mean, this is one of those cases where that we have enough reason to believe that he's going to do a fine job of delivering a game that clearly had millions of dollars spent on it. But I kind of wonder about when does that moment come? And I don't know enough about other Kickstarted projects outside of video games to know how frequent a very, very large project does fall apart, outside of games.
It seems to happen pretty frequently. I mean, we've seen some Sony studios, which, when they say that we're going back to the drawing board and we're laying off a lot of people, that's basically saying what they were working on was a complete failure and we fired them.
Yeah.
But in a very nice way. Usually, and also like internal restructuring, like when you're going, like, you guys have been working on something and we don't like it, so we'll try to get some of you other jobs in other parts of the company where maybe they're working on something that you can do, but the rest of you are just going to go back to the drawing board and do something different because
Yep.
This ain't working out.
And so on that note, let's go on to something more fun, which is music. So put on your headphones. This is going to be the music quiz. I actually have a nice pair of headphones this week because we didn't have to share anything, which is good. And so Benito is over there. He's going to play some music. Now, here's what this is based on. So, of course, Sunset Overdrive. has, lots of information has suddenly come out about Sunset Overdrive, which is Insomniac's upcoming game. And it looks cool. It has an interesting art style. It's going to be an open world action game. So what I did is I put together, and we've done an open world action game sound quiz before, but I believe that there might be one game that crosses over, but none of the tracks are the same. So why don't we go ahead and start with the first one, and first come, first serve. Whoever figures it out first gets the points. And I'm loaded with points today.
Unload all your points.
Ew.
This is an open world game?
This is an open world action game.
Because I would have thought The Last of Us, but that's not open world.
No, and it's not The Last of
there
Us.
we go. It sounds very Metroid. It's not Other M, is it? Is that open world-ish? You can explore.
No.
Is it Gravity Rush?
No.
No. Okay.
I'm letting it go so that other people in the chat can also try to figure it out. It's not Titanfall, which is also not open world.
No, it does kind of sound like Titanfall, though.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it's nobody's getting it.
Is it? Well, no.
I mean, it's not a huge game, so I didn't start with an easy one, but I'm surprised that nobody figured it out.
Very sci-fi.
Is it Defiance?
It's not Defiance. The answer is this is Crackdown 2.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's Crackdown 2. So obviously the the disappointing sequel to the original Crackdown, which in and of itself had a lot of room to grow, and then so they made it grow by making exactly the same game. So good job there. I'm sorry, that was mean. I shouldn't say good job there. That's a little too mean even for me. Let's go ahead and try the next one. Again, this is an open world action game. Sounds a whole lot like the last one.
It's a challenge to write this kind of music, though, that can play throughout a whole MMO session.
Forever. That's some trumpets, kind of very mariachi sounding.
I feel like a rattlesnake's about to bite me any moment.
Just Cause
Red
2?
No,
No.
Red Dead?
It is Red Dead.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
this is from Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, I should have.
So, and excellent. Seriously, that music just says desert to me. Seriously, I'm going to be, bitten by a rattlesnake any moment. Do rattlesnakes bite? Is that what they do? Or do they just...
They'll bite.
Yeah, they
do?
bite.
Okay, yeah. I was watching QI last night, actually, and there had a discussion about snakes. But that's a day for another... something for another time. Benito, we should move on to the next open world action game. What do you think?
Sure.
All right, let's do it.
It sounds super Firefly. No? Oh, there we go. Very people in armor and suits and going to war. Lord of the Rings Online.
No.
It's an action game.
It's an open world action game. It's action. So no MMOs here. No games I would consider role-playing games.
Skyrim.
People have the right kind of thing going in the chat, but they're choosing the wrong one.
So it's a game with multiple entries?
This is a game with multiple entries, but people are choosing the wrong one.
Oh, Uncharted? That's not open world.
No.
I know this game. That's action.
Yes. We've established this. It is-
I'm like.
So yes, it is Assassin's Creed. Is the one people are coming up with in the
Oh.
chat. But the question is which one is it? And
Oh,
people
so that's a-
people kept choosing the wrong one at first. This was 3. Yes.
Wow. I would have
So
thought
that was Assassin's Creed 3.
I would have thought Black Flag. It sounded more, I don't know, like a little piratey rather than kind of colonial America-y to me.
Yeah, but you have to remember too that they were actually going in that direction with the ship combat.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, and I think that's what they were. I think that's what they were going with. But most of the ones I saw in the chat first were Assassin's Creed 4.
Yeah.
So I had to pull them back just a little bit. And what do we have next? Ooh, let's go for number 4 and see if anybody gets this particular tune, which is just rollicking and fun. So rollicking and fun that there it goes. Here we go.
My headphones keep going in and out.
I'm sorry.
Stupid headphones.
This has got a good beat. You could dance with this.
If I'm in a club, bottle full of bug.
Something desolate.
Very empty world. In a world where a man
Yes.
can only find
Yes.
his one true love
No.
with a dog
No.
who's able to sniff out
No.
her zombie brains.
No.
Zombie Love, the movie.
No. That's not what this is. This game has no zombies.
Dust.
It might have dust.
No, Dust.
I know what you're talking about.
Who's on first?
I will. Let's see if I can give you a hint. This is a game that came out this year. And again, it's an open world action game, so
Yes.
people saying Beyond Two Souls can stop that.
There's not a lot of games that have come out this year. We're limited.
Yeah.
I keep expecting the music to give me some kind of hint.
Oh wait, is this the beginning of that Chris Isaac song? For a moment, I thought it was gonna. And I wanna fall in love. That's what he sounds like in that song. All right, so the answer is Infamous Second Son.
Oh,
Oh,
Is
wow.
what this is.
I have not played that yet.
I can't
So-
believe that didn't even occur to me for some reason.
And if there's anything that says Infamous, it's all of that music that says nothing at all.
It's like Portland.
The game
Yeah,
is set
could
in
be.
Seattle.
It's in Seattle, though. Yeah,
Oh, they're the same place to me.
yeah. Are they?
Not to offend our listeners who are from one of those places.
Not to offend you, but here's something offensive.
Pacific Northwesterners.
And we got one left. So why don't we throw this one in again? Open world action game. By the way, I chose some of these on purpose because they use many of the same musical ideas.
Spelunky. Oh. Time. That means you're in a rush. The ticking clock to move you forward. Girl singing. Final Fantasy. No, that's RPG. Lightning Returns was kind of. Some very new agey.
I actually really like the soundtrack.
So something supernatural to all this.
Yes. A little bit.
Snaky.
It's one of my favorite games over the last couple of years, although it's not one that we really talk about in the office, so that's not really helpful.
Sadly.
What's that?
Sadly, because I love this game.
Yeah, it's just not one that really caught on in the editorial land.
Probably not a game that I even played then. This does not sound familiar at all. Fucking rocking out now.
All right, let's see some hints, since I want to see somebody get it before I just tell you what it is. Let's see. All right, this is part of a series. This is a game that is in a series. And in fact, the original game in this series has been getting a little bit of attention because it was, I think, re-released on Steam recently. And it is the game that made a particular developer's reputation for making
These kind of games.
beautiful games, although now that developer doesn't make this series anymore.
Saints Row,
No.
the fourth.
Although the original developer has gone on to continue its reputation for making high-budget, very good-looking video card breaking games.
I got nothing. I mean, this music is beautiful, but I don't recognize it at all.
Let's see what else. Okay, so... Oh, gosh.
One of the best video game villains from that year.
Yes, it was a great video game villain.
Okay.
Who defined insanity for us.
Kevin Spacey.
What is the definition of insanity, Caro? It's doing the
the
same
same
thing
thing
you've
over
always done
and expecting different results.
Yes.
I'm
Really?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nobody remembers?
I'm sorry.
Really? Oh gosh, what else? Okay. Sean reviewed the second. Okay. Jason Ocampo reviewed the first game in this series. Sean reviewed the second game in this series. I reviewed the third game in this series.
Assassin's Creed.
No!
Kingdom Hearts.
The second game in this series had malaria.
Far Cry.
Yes, this is Far Cry 3.
Okay.
I need to play those.
I really love Far Cry 3.
It was so good. I didn't play it that year, though. The year it came out, so I didn't actually vote for a game of the year. I would have, though, if I had played it that year.
Oh my gosh, that was...
Sorry, that took way longer than it should have.
That's quite fine.
I don't know why.
It's late.
People got it in the chat, though, right?
late.
It's Friday.
People in the chat were
Friday
like-
afternoon.
Those fucking
I'm
idiots.
ready for a nap.
You're all terrible. All terrible.
The chat got it, though, right?
Oh yeah, they had it
Yeah.
a long time ago. But I know, being on the other end, suddenly when you're on the spot, how ridiculously tough that can sometimes be.
I need to play those games.
I'm sorry I went too long. Everybody's complaining that I let that go too long. Well, right now, maybe we'll just sit here and do nothing for a little while, and
Just stare
we'll
awkwardly.
see. We'll see just how long it goes then for you, huh? Anyway, thank you. First of all, to the people in this room, I'm gonna start with Benito this time, so that I don't leave him out, because I've done that before. So thank you, Benito, for being awesome and for running the machines.
He is the most important part of this show.
He is the most important part of this show, besides Justin Haywald.
I am the least essential part of this show.
You're a part of the show.
I am
Hooray!
the appendix.
You're like the Alan Davies of the show.
I don't know.
You don't know who that is. Hopefully, the British watchers and listeners know who that is.
Is that a QI thing?
Yes, it is a
I need
QI
to watch-
thing. Hooray!
I need to watch QI
You can be the
illegally on YouTube.
You could. Well, you could. It's not illegal on YouTube. It might be illegal for them to have uploaded it, but it's not illegal for you to watch it. And yay, Carolyn Pettit was also here.
I was.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yay!
Yay.
And thanks to everybody out there too. You're awesome. And you should, number one, you should subscribe to us on Twitch, because usually we try to be on Fridays at 3 p.m. live. Sometimes that doesn't really work out as well as I'd like it to. But you should still do it. And you should still follow us on Twitch. You should also follow each of us individually on Twitter. Caro is...
Carolyn Michelle.
And Justin Haywald.
Justin Haywald.
And Benito.
Bang3, BENG3.
And me, I'm Fiddle Cub. And also subscribe to this very podcast on your favorite podcast player, whether that be iTunes, whether that be... I know you've got a Zune in your pocket, the two of you that have Zunes. Both of you watch the show, I'm pretty sure, or listen in.
I'm a big fan of Downcast.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
handy.
totally. Stitcher, we're on Stitcher as well, and we're in other places. So whatever your RSS feed player is, just use that. Listen to us every week or whenever it is I decide that I'm going to gift you with a special podcast. And so thank you for tuning in. And if all goes well, we will see you next week for episode 71 on GameSpot Gameplay.